Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Julian Lytle, and this is another episode of Ignorant Bliss. Last week, I was able to go to San Diego Comic Con, and I was able to record two panels. This one here is the spotlight on my friend Ronald Wimberly, moderated by David Brothers. Both have been on the show before. Both are great guys, doing very important things within comics. Ron, of course, is a creator, a cartoonist. Soon with Prince of Catsman re-release through Image Comics and a bigger, better special edition, along with things like Sunset Park and Gratuitous Ninja on the Stila app. David Brothers works at Image. He manages the site. He puts out the Image Plus magazine, and he also is a great writer and posts essays on his thoughts on many different things. Hope you enjoy. I'm not on it. This is all you're going to hear from me. Read the show notes and the blog post about contact information and such. You can find me online at Julian Lytle, Lytle. Subscribe to this on iTunes or Google Play Music or Stitcher or a multitude of ways of listening, SoundCloud. And I hope you enjoy. Peace.
How are y'all doing? You can hear me okay? There we go.
It's not video recorded, so like eating this banana won't be weird.
Yeah.
Except that I just
said this
announced
recorded
that.
on the. So this is Spotlight on Ronald Wimberly. I figure if you're in here, you don't really need an introduction, but I mean, Prince of Cats, Papa Midnight. You were assistant on not Hellblazer, but Lucifer for a long while. Slave Punk, Sunset Park.
Yeah.
You got a lot going on. Attack on Titan.
Yeah. Attack on Titan. Yeah.
So, I'm just going to start on like a very, very basic note. Where are you from and where do you live?
From Washington, D.C. I grew up in D.C. and Maryland, a little bit of Virginia. Now I'm in Brooklyn. I went to Pratt Institute in Brooklyn back in '97. Yeah. And I never left.
What is it about Brooklyn that keeps you?
It's funny. So I spent a large portion of my childhood at my great-grandmother's house in southeast Washington, D.C. And I think it was just very formative for me in terms of like what a comfort level of density of people, how neighborhoods work, And when I was a teenager, we moved to like the suburbs, like Montgomery County. And I think it was almost like a return to what was comfortable to me to move to Brooklyn. You know? And it was the 90s, so it was this bohemian Fort Greene era, Brooklyn. It was real formative for me, like a safe space to be creatively,
Is that where Spike Lee's studio is?
Yeah, Spike Lee's studio. He used to have the Firehouse, which is on DeKalb, right across from the park. And now I think he still has a building off of Lafayette in Fort Greene. Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And also, you were in, what was it, Spike Lee's war movie?
Yeah. Miracle at St. Anna. I was an extra in the film. I played a Buffalo Soldier. Spike wanted American-looking black men to play the Buffalo Soldiers. So, and in a weird sort of, he's like a steward to like young black men. He's like, I'm gonna take y'all motherfuckers to Italy. You know? So like we all went on a plane. We did practical training with like M1 Garands and stuff, and like World War II or style training. Dodging. We had this Air Force guy from like British Air Force training us. The same guy who helped Spielberg do the scenes in Saving Private Ryan. He was training us.
That's nuts.
It was crazy. So we did 6 weeks. 6 weeks of shooting, or 6 weeks for the shoot, but 4 of those weeks were us just training.
just like getting in shape.
Yeah.
And ready for the revolution.
Yeah.
So I think the first time that I saw was like Ron Wimberly's a dude in comics was Papa Midnight. You were doing covers for those, and this is one of them up here. How did that gig come about?
Well, you know, I was talking about it earlier today. I think it was 2004. It was my first, or the Comic-Con maybe where I got work in comics. That's a lie. I previously worked for, I'd done a short. My first stint in comics, I did a short for Les Humanoids, Metal Harlem.
That's where you started?
That was my first strip that I illustrated. I'd won the Dark Horse strip search for like December or something prior, but that was kind of like, I don't know if, I don't think I got paid for that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, Les Humanoids, not that getting paid for something is what makes it, you know, its value. But yeah, Les Humanoids, it was a strip called Overdose, and it was about a young man who would OD and turn into a spectral version of himself to case places that they would rob. I forget the name of the writer. It was that long ago. You know, I'm sorry if you possibly are hearing this or still working in comics. That was for Les Humanoids. And then I came back to San Diego, and that's when I got a job, or got picked up by Vertigo, and I did a Lucifer fill-in, and then I got a Covered series, which is, I think, pretty bugged out.
Yeah.
You know, I thought it was bugged out. So, like, yeah.
And it was with Matt Johnson writing and Tony.
Yeah,
Strawn.
Matt Johnson. Yeah. Who is still a great guy. He's funny on Twitter.
His book, Loving Day, just came out. I just started that. And there's a scene set in like a Comic-Con where he gets seated in where the black guys in the con have to sit. And he kind of goes in.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, I got to pick that up.
But so from then, you mostly work on your own. Like you write and draw your own stuff. You've collaborated some.
Well, yeah, I did Sentences for Vertigo too. And I feel like that's around the time we must have met. I don't even remember how, yo. Like, it's weird looking back. How do you meet people? Yeah, Sentences was the last time I kind of did a really, which isn't that long ago, but a full book someone else wrote, but it was written by Grimm. You know, it's his life story. It's a crazy life story. And now I push to write my own things because I feel like there's space for it. You know what I mean? And I can write. So why
That's
not?
true. Any Prince of Cats fans in the audience? Very cool. Everybody. This is like 50% of the print run right here.
Lord have mercy.
Yeah.
It's true, though.
But so, where did Prince of Cats come from?
Man, I feel like I tell this story every time. I tell it a little different.
Yeah.
I had, for years, I had an idea kind of floating around in my head in regard to Romeo and Juliet, because when I first read Romeo and Juliet, like probably in like high school or junior high, I just remember feeling insulted by the spectacle of the characters like running around killing each other and like killing themselves because of love or whatever. Like, whatever, that's bullshit. Like, it's like, B, just let's find another, you know what I mean? Like, you know, kill yourself over some girl, right?
And they were teenagers.
They're teenagers, right? Like, yeah. Because it's reflecting on me. You know what I mean? Your ego. You know, like, oh, kids they wouldn't do that. Then I got old and I was like, yo, kids do that shit.
Yeah.
Kids do that shit, right? And yeah, it became like a way for me to explore that and explore sort of the lot, like ask myself questions about the kids that I grew up around and like the things that they did. Because when you're an adult, all of a sudden you find that like a lot of the kids you grew up with aren't with you anymore for random reasons. Like, you know, maybe they got into trouble, maybe they committed suicide, maybe they were part of they had led a violent life. And it was a way for me to explore certain things that I feel like even if you're a black man of a certain age, you may I'm not going to project on other people try to make it black malehood monolithic, but you may have a bit of questions, maybe like survivor's guilt, you know? You get to, and when I started to write that, I was around like maybe 25, you know? Started to think about, you know, the ideas started to bubble up.
That's really when you start becoming an adult too, because like there's no more safety net, like there's no college, any of that. Like you kind of have to do your own thing.
I mean, I had my friends throw a net under me now, you know, keep it 100. But I started to think about that, and like you hitting 27, and like you start to get older than the people your heroes who died when they were young. Yeah. You know, like so I got older than Pac, I got older than Biggie, I got older than, you know, all of these young men, and I started to think about that, and like you maybe have family, cousins, and friends or old friends who like they haven't been as fortunate as you are, or like, and I started asking myself questions. I started to think about Tybalt. And I started to think about like why did he was well learned, right? He went to school. Like why was he causing so much static, you know? And why were these kids killing each other, and why do kids kill each other? I don't know if I achieved that exploration in the book, but that certainly is what sparked a lot of say the shift in perspective too. Also, I've noticed something that I've done regularly, and how I think about things is like maybe looking at the perspective outside of the story that's told by the main character. And that was, I think, a critical shift for me in developing Prince of Cats, was thinking like, I don't actually want to follow Romeo and Juliet and their story, but I'm wondering like this guy who kind of is cast is just a guy who likes to fight. What about like why? Yeah,
it's like the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern approach.
Yeah. I mean, not as bugged out. Yeah. But like, yeah.
I think we did like a big interview when Prince of Cats came out, and I forget if you said it or if I said it, but it's like stuck in my head ever since that Tybalt was on a suicidal rush towards manhood, which sounds contradictory, but like when you're desperate to be seen as a man, as someone who can carry your own weight or whatever, like anything goes. I think that's reflected really well in the book. But so it came out through Vertigo. Kind of a small paperback. It's coming out again later this year. Yeah. What's the deal with the new edition?
Yo, the new edition, man, I went in. No Bobby. I went in, like, I took, there were some things when it first came out that I wasn't, like, super happy with. Like, for one, the cover that I had designed for it, sort of like the sketch cover went out on it. There were things in the book that I didn't get final pass on, you know, so there were things that I didn't even notice. I remember I hand drew all of the sounds this time around, and like I was on a page and I was like, wow, that sound is actually on the wrong panel. So I fixed that. Things like that I fixed. A homie of mine who helped me with the script the first time, someone who has not Karen Green, who's actually in the audience right now, but like a friend, I probably should have talked to her about it, but a friend who's kind of just as much into language as I am, she went over my language, like the Elizabethan English a little bit, and just the things that are, you know, that I didn't deliberately change. She helped me take a pass, and then I took a pass on her pass, and so I fixed a few things like that. I added a 10-page sketchbook, a new cover, and that's mostly it. I changed color in one or two places where I thought, like, going over it again. Yeah, and the format.
It's massive. Album size, right?
Yeah, it's nearly twice as big.
Yeah. And so I got this picture off your Instagram where it's your hand on the page.
Yeah.
Did you hand color this, or what are you doing here?
I pencil, ink, and then I do color in Photoshop. But I have a trick because like the look that I want, there's like an aesthetic principle, like shibui, right? Shibusa, which is like muted colors and then bright colors, but like kind of this aesthetic principle where there's a bit of fading and a texture that I wanted to have with the colors, so I added something, a little bit of, put a little swag on it. I mean, to bring down those colors a bit in places to give, which is like an aesthetic, it's an aesthetic principle that I kind of do regularly, but also in this case, it connects to the theme of the book, like some of the aesthetic themes.
And someone always wants to ask, like, what's your pencil? And the answer is always, like, whatever works for the job. But, like, what are the tools that you use? What are your preferred?
When I did this, I probably just used, like, a not too soft lead, maybe like a 2B. I like Tombow pencils, you know, but sometimes just whatever's around. Scan that in, print that out as blue, and then I inked over that for most of these pages. But my process changed during this book. Like, you know, there's a good maybe like 20 pages. So if you look at the pages, there are some pages that are done on different paper. And in fact, there's maybe a few that are like a different size because, and some are folded in half because I inked a good portion of this book when I was in Japan for like, I don't remember how long I was there that time, at least 3 weeks, but I needed to continue working. So, and I needed to move the pages. So I got a sketchbook out there, like some of those pages are smaller, some of them are folded in half because I couldn't scan them, you know, and, you know, so my process flips and changes a bit, and the tools that I can get wherever I am. Part of the book I did when I was in LA working on Black Dynamite, you know, so like I'm finishing Black Dynamite, then I'm going home and I'm working on Prince of Cats, you know. So the process changes. The color process is the same wherever I am because the tools are easy to transport, you know.
What makes your process comfortable to you? Like even on newer work or past work, like kind of how do you figure out like this is what's right for me?
I had a hard time on Gratin recently getting into it, just resisting doing the work, you know?
Yeah.
And when I did the work, it was labor. Like, I mean, hard labor. Like, not wanting to draw even, you know? So another great artist, Richie Pope, came through, and, like, he was at the studio, and he pulled out this, like, I guess it's a fine liner, it's a pilot pen. And I was like, wow, I was drawing with that when I first started Gratin, and I was having fun. But I was like, oh, this is maybe taking too long. Let me try to digitize my process more. And then when he pulled it out and he did this little sketch of me, which is like a great drawing. This guy is sick. He's nasty.
Yeah.
And I looked at it and I was like, yo, I'm gonna let me play with the tools. And it's like actually one of the things that's important to my process right now is doing the things that are sensually engaging to me. So like working on paper isn't always the best in terms of like how long it'll take me to finish. You know, like it's inefficient, you know? Digitally, once you learn the tools, you can move quickly, right? But I use paper and I use ink and I'll switch tools up to engage me, and that's an important part of my process now. You know, like do what feels good. Like give yourself a reward in your process, and like that's been helping me out, and it affects the work. Like I read this article. Romberger just did an article about Basquiat, where he's talking about how at a certain point, people who were gallerists or whatever, they wanted Basquiat to work in oil, but how that affected the way he worked because the immediacy of working with acrylic, like, was part of his
like the spontaneity.
Yeah. And so, and that changes like the marks you can make with Gratin using that fine liner, maybe it's Pilot. I forget the name of it. But like using these flat calligraphy pens forced me to be less precious about things and to be more committed to the marks that I made. And also sometimes not having the ability to do smaller details in a, labored way.
Yeah.
And it affected the aesthetic of it. So by the time I get to the end, I changed tools again, and I went to like Sakura and like Fude pens and like maybe the fine liners for larger areas. But the aesthetic had been already changed, and like it went to a third place, And I need to do that. I need to slap box with the work a little bit, like I need to, get a little checked.
I had no idea that Richie did that for you.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Richie Pope, he's on Twitter, RichiePope. He's done like Google Doodles, he got the Black History
He's the MLK one. Yeah. He's killing it.
He's a great dude.
Yeah. And just a great, another thing that Richie and Chris
Kindred is at NPR now.
Yeah. And Visions too, like when I saw them at SPX, for a long time I felt kind of alone, and I would meet like a few people who would be kind of like rays of light in comics.
Yeah.
And like you and like a few of the folks in the audience here, you know, Goldman, Julian.
What's up,
I've known
Julian?
Julian for forever, and Ted from the beginning. You know what I mean? Like Ted was around when I first started to draw comics.
Yeah.
You know, and Karen. You know, I just felt like not into, no offense, like the comics community. And then when I actually got out into a different type of comics community, I started to see like, wow, okay, no, this is really cool. And Richie and Chris were part of that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I'm glad I met Richie at TCAF this year.
Oh,
we got
okay.
to chat for a while, and it was really dope. But you mentioned Gratuitous Ninja. It's on Steeler right now.
Yeah.
There's like old issues you can pick up somewhere if you can
Yeah.
dig in the crates.
Yeah. I mean, Google. You know, that's something I like to promote is people digging.
Yeah.
You know, because I feel like part of my creative evolution, like how I discovered who I am and what I'm into, was about digging, like not finding the stuff like right on the top. Like people talk, oh yeah, X-Men this, that, and the third, and I'm like, no, like Dave Cooper. You know what I mean? Like that was like a formative part of my relationship to comics, was like his little pervy, weird, you know, Ripple and stuff. Like going to Jim Hanley's in New York and going to the adult section and like seeing these weird comics, man. Like Dave is a killer, man. He's just like, oh, I'm going to leave comics now. And more successful at going and just doing paintings, you know, like hopefully Mignola can pull it off. I don't know if he'll be able to pull it off like Cooper, you know, like, yeah. Well, good luck, Mignola. I hope you fail miserably and come back to comics.
Yeah.
As I feel about Cooper too. And, you know, others.
So Gratuitous Ninja, for those of you who haven't seen it, it's ninjas and pirates in modern New York, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's a synthesis of a lot of stuff that you're into.
Yeah.
Like even on a storytelling level, on just like a conceptual level.
Mm-hmm. So, Gratuitous Ninja was the second comic I ever drew. The first comic I drew was called Vandal Vigilantes. It was about like, you know that Static Fish? Yeah. It was about this guy who was like a vandal vigilante, you know, like he's an I was reading a lot of Adbusters and stuff, you know what I mean? I had been all through like high school and stuff, so I was like, yo, ads, you know, control your space, man, like destroy all of this advertising. So that was the first one. Then the second one, I wanted to work with form, right? Like the form of comics. And I was like, well, I had just really gotten into Mobius. And his works were silent, the ones that I was really into, Arzak. And I was like, I just want to work with the form, and okay, we have to finish this Static Fish comic relatively quickly. What am I going to do it on? And I was like, I'm just going to, like, ninjas are always doing stuff, like, they're very active, you know, so what am I don't have time to come up with a title. I'm just going to call it Gratuitous Ninja, like, that's what it is. There are just this ninja, like, doing stuff, like, they're active, they're cool, they're this mythical, you know, like, they're historical, sure, but they're like cowboys, you know, it's like, you have an idea of what the West was, the terrible, horrible, scary place. Yeah. And then you have, like, you know, a guy with a white hat on, you know, and it's like, okay, that is its own thing. And so originally that's what Gratuitous Ninja was, and I put all, you know, my own sort of, you know, what the spectacle of an actual historical character or figure or class of people was. And I made this comic. And so now here we are, probably 10, 15 years later. It's always been something for me to experiment with formalistically. And now I'm using it to experiment with like manga, the new format, which is on the phone, so it's like scrolling.
Yeah,
so
it's all vertical.
Which is in its own way kind of like some of the earliest narrative, like pictorial narrative forms were like on scrolls, like the proto-manga, you know, I think the first, one of the first, not the bubbles. We had this on Facebook. We were talking about what was the first sound as word or something, right? And someone mentioned something, and I was like, well, no, there's this scroll, this old animal scroll that has something like that.
Yeah.
You know, so it's my way to experiment with those things. And yeah, narrative-wise, also like ideas like appropriation, you know, which is like, okay, well, what is it? Like when you say it, is it necessarily negative? And it's been a big part of my work, you know. I've had like weird relationship with the aesthetics, certain aesthetics of Japanese visual culture. I mean, growing up even, like I would say most of us, the one visual culture that affected, for my generation, us more than, say, the West in general, probably was, Japan.
Yeah.
And also in terms of the culture of objects in general. So at a certain point, we had things coming into our environment that were strictly non-Western, in terms of industry even, like at a certain point Japan had bought 7-Eleven, had bought the 666 building in Manhattan, like Japanese businessmen.
Yeah.
If you turned on TV, like Japanese animators were animating G.I. Joe. It went from a few cartoons like Astro Boy or whatever to you're being American youth, whether they knew it or not, were being their aesthetic was being programmed by television and aesthetics, like flat aesthetics from the other side of the planet, And so that comes out in my work, and that's an important part of my work. How does that affect your identity? And how does being completely, the assumption that maybe from the aesthetic, anything about the actual culture, Yeah. So that's a part of Gratnan too.
And how do you see the cultural exchange? Like, we have a conversation about cultural appropriation that's very big right now. For example, I think Blake Lively said that she had an Oakland booty and an LA face on Instagram, which is a Baby Got Back quote. Yeah. It's like, who does Baby Got Back belong to culturally,
Yeah.
And I feel like you're taking that head on, kind of in Gratuitous Ninja.
Yeah. I mean, if I have an opportunity to continue to create these, it gets direct because it's about a family. I made a history for this story where, spoiler alert, where where a group of ninja from the Namba region, southern Japan, follow the Dutch. So there's a historic event called the Shimabara Rebellion. It's one of the last big battles and wars in in Japanese history. I think it's early Edo period, and the Dutch are involved. And it involves a bunch of Christian Japanese, and Ronin, and it's a great story, right?
Yeah.
Miyamoto Musashi was there. One of the last times the Koga were a part of an active part of war. It all happens in this one place, and the Dutch are there, right? So I was like, well, what if these ninja followed the Dutch, the East India Company, to Brooklyn, and then and that's when they got to New York, right?
Yeah.
And so, okay, well, what about this family who is they're American, right? But they have traditions, many people, West Indians, Asian people, South Asian people in America have that. And that sort of exchange between other groups of people, and particularly in this case, Black and Latino, who don't necessarily have the same type of connection to their culture or maybe the same cultural legacy. And what does that mean to interact with them there? And then what is appropriation in this case?
Yeah. It's like finding that line.
Yeah. And it's not deliberate at all. It's just writing these characters because I grew up in neighborhoods that had this sort of interaction going, And when you come in contact with people and you experience their culture, not as a commodity, but just as a way that humans interact,
And
LA booty.
Yeah.
Oakland booty, LA face.
Oakland booty, LA face.
Okay.
She definitely shouldn't have said it, but there's still a conversation.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting in there.
Because I'm wondering what that is, though.
Yeah.
I know what an LA face is, kind of, right?
Yeah.
La face.
But the cool thing about Gratuitous Ninja is that it sounds like a fantastic idea, or a fantastic goal, I guess might be the right term. But then there was the Yasuke, the Black Samurai,
Yeah.
who ended up being a retainer for
Hold on, give me a second. Nobunaga.
It was Nobunaga. Yeah. And it's like, this sounds like an awesome movie, like unto itself, but it was real life.
Yeah, I have a surprise for you guys at Image, actually, in regard to Yasuke.
Okay.
I'm working on it. I know you guys haven't heard much from me. I'm working.
Yeah, I'm excited.
I'm pulling together something. But yeah, Yasuke is a part of the mythology of the things that I'm working on, too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of history and kind of culture, your Black history pieces, I feel like especially in the past couple of years, like you've really gone hard on this in really interesting ways. What was the origin of this kind of push?
It's funny because at the NIB, they hit me up the first time I did it. They hit me up and they were like, oh, you should do something, like we have these quotes, like find some quotes and then do portraits. So like I got to give it to them for that. And I hit them back with a bunch of quotes. They hit me back with a bunch of names. And I was like, oh, well, a lot of these guys, most of the people you've picked, actually all of the people you've picked are men. And there were 8 of them, right? Or we were going to do 8. 6 of them were men, which meant that I got to choose 2 who would be, like, not men. So then I did 12. And that happens to work perfectly, in a month. So I could do 4 a week on the gram. And I just was like, wow, okay, this is edifying to me. You know what I mean? Also, when I got to the point where it's like, okay, they're the usual suspects, where it's like, okay, these are guys, I already know their quotes, right? But then when I started to be like, I'm looking at this roster and like, this is not representative of like the intellectual or kind of like overall the voice of Black history. And so I started to like dig and find people and think unconventional. And then the second year, they didn't ask me to do it.
Yeah.
So, and they weren't going to pay me for it. So I was like, yo, I'm going to pick whoever. I'm going to put Mickey Blanco on there. Like, I don't care,
Yeah.
Yeah, so like, and I just started to go in. And now it's like, I kind of just want to do it. I want to do it every year, Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I talked to another buddy, a cartoonist, the other day, and he was like, oh, well, and he's not Black. He's like a white guy. And he's like, oh, I kind of want to do this. And just because, like, there are a lot of, I just want to celebrate that, right? And I hope he does it. I'm a big fan of his, and like, I'm not going to put him on blast, but like, he's one of the reasons I got into comics. And actually, his teacher was a Black man. So he's like, well, I just want to, draw.
Yeah.
I just want to draw like Black people, and I don't even want it to be about me drawing Black people, but I actually want the drawings that I'm doing to be like
about that.
Yeah, so people can feel it, you know what I mean? But do it in a way where it's not like, okay, hey, check it out, I'm drawing Black people. It's like, nah, I just wanted to draw these people, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be like that big a deal, but it is a big deal. Shit's fucked up.
Yeah. And what is it that was edifying for you?
Well, just going through the quotes, like while I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to pick. And then I'm just starting to discover people and what they've said. At one point, I wanted to I was looking for particularly like Black women and their quotes. And at the time, I was reading a lot, and I still am reading first-person slave narratives. And so there are a few women from like the antebellum period, like the Reconstruction period, writers, and none of their quotes were short enough to fit in this format. But like, I'm just reading it though. So you go from a point where I don't know if you're creative, you get to a point where you're researching something, and it goes from like being about work or researching to just like,
you just gotta know.
Like I gotta know, like these guys, they're saying some amazing things. And in that sense. And also maybe about the audience, edifying in a way where it's like, wow, okay, people are snapping this up, and this is powerful to people, and I learned something about my place and position to, you're creatively enabled and supported by your community, and you don't always know what that community is.
I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, but I've heard this from several people. I know several different comics creators where they see what you do and they go like, I got to get like that. Like he's doing, like he's representing in a way that I wish I could or that I want to in the future. And both from like young guys and older guys alike. So I feel like these especially were really effective. And then you had Lighten Up and also at the NIB, which was about not just it's not even really about being black in comics. It's about being aware and kind of conscious of your work. Can you talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, it was like a little anecdote. It came about because Matt Boards at the Nib, I told him a story, and I was like, yeah, I want to do this as a comic. And, time went by, and he's like, oh, I really want you to do that. And usually I didn't have any time to do it, and so I started working on it, and we were struggling. He's like, I want you to be in the story, or I want you to represent yourself in the story. And like, I'm working, and I'm getting more constraints, and then all of a sudden I have an idea of how to solve the problem. And that's where it's sort of the structure with the, and it's credit to Matt for really like pushing me to like into a corner where I had to be creative about solving the problem. And I just wanted to talk about this weird feeling of like, it's not me accusing someone of being racist, where like, I mean, which I feel is a moot point, because it's like, the structures of racism are there. We're all going to be doing racist things. And like, are you willing to recognize that and like kind of adjust your behavior? Or are you just afraid of being called out?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For something. And I wanted to get this all of these complex thoughts I had in my mind. Because like when it first happened, I was like, I don't want to like make you feel some type of way, but like that made me feel some type of way. You know what I mean? Like, and why does it matter? Like, why does it matter? The exchange is there. The email exchange is there. Like it was like kind of, I wanted to joke and be like, yeah, I'm not changing it. Like, this is ridiculous, right? That you asked me. You've realized how this is ridiculous. Give you like a way out. And then I got something back that was almost like, no, but here's the reason. And I'm like, but no, there's no reason. There's no reason. Thank you. Yeah, there's no reason. And so at that point, I kind of felt powerless, which I have a homegirl of mine who said something to me about something that happened. Just quick sideways, something for us to think about, where something had happened to a friend of mine who's a woman, and she was like, yeah, well, I know you want to do something, but like you're powerless, and like sit with that, because sometimes like that's what it is, and that's how she feels, and like you need to like,
you need to take the L, basically.
Yeah. And I felt powerless, but also at the back of my head I was like, well, this might have to be some art then. You know what I mean? Like, so when the opportunity came, I was like, I'll tell the story, and I told the story. And it was difficult, not like, on some, I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to work with Marvel again, because I really, maybe I should, but I don't give a fuck. But it was more difficult because, like, I wanted the editor and I wanted people involved to get the information without being defensive about it. Mm-hmm. And, like, one of the ways I feel like I failed is, and I don't know if it's my fault, but one of the things that failed about the strip is it didn't go through without raising defenses to the point where, like, I don't know if the editor learned anything from that strip. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And, like, from what I heard Axel say, I don't think he learned anything from it either. You know what I mean? So.
But I think that's the risk when discussing this stuff, is that you can't predict how somebody's going to react. Even if you lay something out in, like, a nice, even tone of voice, like you use the right tone of voice,
right.
They'll still be like, so wait, this is about race. Are you trying to call me a racist?
Right.
Even when you don't mention it at all. Mm-hmm. Like, I appreciated the strip for, like, how evenly it laid everything out. It's like, here's the situation, here's what I did, here's what you asked for, here's how it ended up. And that's something that's tough to pull off, I think, like walking that line.
That's actually my landlord.
Really?
That's terrifying. Anyway.
But no, this is it's up for an Eisner. Like,
yeah, it's up for an Eisner.
People love it.
Yeah. I hope so.
And I guess continuing on the Marvel front, one thing you added to the description of the panel is why you'll probably never work for Marvel.
Yeah. I mean, I just wanted to I didn't work. I wanted to get more people in here because I thought, like, if I say something,
outrageous,
and you're like, oh, what's this? Oh, he said Marvel. Like, I feel like half the things, it's like half the times people show up, it's like if I had just put like Batman, Superman, Black Panther, Marvel, DC, Disney,
Spider-Man sketches, variant cover.
Yeah. People would just show up like, You know what I mean? Like, okay. And they'd sit through the entire time.
Yeah.
So they, I had done a few, Axel reached out to me, and like I had done a few things for them. I guess I had done like a Spider-Man thing, or like I'd done some covers or something, I forget. And he's like, well, towards the beginning of that, he's like, tell me about some things that you would be interested in doing. Like, show me some stuff, like what would you do? And so I put together some images of things that, like, okay, what I'd be interested in doing. Like, Blade was interesting to me because of, like, the spectacle of, like, black masculinity, like, you know, a vampire who, you know, like, in vampires who are, a vampire who can walk in the daylight as if he has some sort of, like, adaptive feature that allows him to, like, be in sunlight, you know, and he just happens to be a black vampire hunter. Also a guy who, like, you know, feels some type of way about other people who are like him, and he's always kind of like fighting that, you know what I mean? Like, and it's, you know, kind of a bit of an internalized conflict that he has. You know, a little bit
going on in there.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, come on, this is rich in every way, you know. So I wanted to do something with that, like, the black body as, you know, he doesn't really have a costume, which is interesting to me too. It's like the black body as, since I did that, we've seen, unfortunately, like countless examples of how the black male body is sort of, is there a word for it, like super, what's the academic word for that?
Just super threatening. I can't think of the proper term, but like threatening outside, like, beyond its proportions, I feel.
Yeah. So, and like a lot of black superheroes, some of the guys have costumes. They don't necessarily have to have a costume. You know what I mean? Like their blackness is their costume.
Yeah, Luke Cage's blackness is his costume.
Yeah. So his skin is literally like a superpower. I love it. Yeah. I love these things. So I did that, and I did Cloak and Dagger because I was like, let me do this, man. Like, you know, if y'all want to talk about this shit, I'm gonna tell you about this. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to have some like real exchanges between, like, you know, these kids, like, I've been that kid, so like, let's have that. Let's do that. And then I got in there, and he's like, oh yeah, I know Brian Wood has a script. I was like, yeah, okay. Like, nah, I have no interest. In, like, you know, anyway. I had no interest in drawing that, you know, but I tried to be polite about it, and I did my best to show that I'd be better at the job. So, and those images I made, and then when I realized, like, hey, you know, I don't know if I ever actually want to do this, I'm just going to show this because, like, I want people to see it, and, like, I want, you know, I know whenever I show something that's like a superhero on Tumblr or the Gram, people just go bananas for it, and I need the endorphin rush of getting a lot of likes on Instagram. So, like, I was like, check it out. Like what I said about the panel, like, check it out.
Yeah.
Marvel, Blade, this, that, and the other. And it blew up. Like, I got a lot of hits. Oh, when is this coming out?
Well. But it's funny because they're not even, you know, like there's like A-list Marvel, like all the Avengers dudes, there's like the X-Men. Blade and Cloak and Dagger haven't been popular in possibly ever. Like Cloak and Dagger had a moment in the 80s, you know, but it still blew up because I think there's something in how you approach the characters that connected with people. Even if it's just like approaching it with real eyes instead of just like he's a vampire hunter and bam, that's it. Like there's depth to it. And when you're working with these kind of characters, you often find yourself trying to find the hook that works for you?
Yeah, so early on in my career, I have my professor at Pratt, one of my biggest teachers was this guy, Floyd Hughes, and he would say to me, like, yeah, you're having fun, you're doing sentences and all that, but, like, how you're really going to get big is just, like, you just got to do, like, a couple of Batmans or something like that, and, like, then you can parlay that into an audience to look at your other stuff, which I think he was absolutely right. But the problem is like, I'm kind of like, I don't ever want to do Batman. Like, I don't ever want to do any of this Marvel stuff. But what he got me to think about, or DC stuff, what he got me to think about was, how would I do it? And so then I started to think about, how could I make it fun for me to work on those things? And then I started to get like, wow, okay, well, I'm actually really into this version. This will never get made, right? Yeah. Because it's kind of caustic. Like, okay, so like this was a bad idea. Like, how do you, and if you give a designer a problem to solve, like, it turns you on, right? So, like, it's like, okay, well, how do I solve this problem? Like, how could I make a Superman story that I would want to draw? I'm like, wow. Think's hard, right? And then all of a sudden I had a problem that was really, exciting to me. And that's kind of what it was with Marvel. It's like, yo, you want to eat, right? Like, probably best page rate you're going to get. How would you do something with this? And it got me excited, and that's how I came up with these ideas. And the Blade thing was the Cloak and Dagger thing was mostly a way to play with type. There was a reason to play with type. I did some character designs, but I spent more time on, like,
the logo?
Sketching around, like, Cloak and Dagger as, like, a type treatment than I did on the characters, I just thought, oh, well, how would I do that? And, like, the Blade thing also was kind of like, thinking about it even from brand and aesthetic wise. So thinking about Blade, I wanted to come up with a story where Blade decided not to kill vampires, and like like a narrative problem. Like, how can I make something interesting? Because that's what people want to see.
Yeah.
So like, how do I get him to do the thing that he doesn't want to do? You know what I mean? And I thought about, and the reason why, and it's obvious now. Drive was like, I thought about Drive, like this character who doesn't want to do, or like is trying to be someone else, right? Mm-hmm. And then has to like do it. And that's why that logo looks like that. Because I was like, I wanted to make like Blade. Yeah. I wanted to be like, Blade is like this guy, he's pretty cool, like he's not doing anything, that spectacular. Yeah. And then it's like some shit goes down, it's like, oh, I gotta fuck shit up now.
Another one that was good for that was The Drop. I think it was a Dennis Lehane novel turned into a movie with Tom Hardy.
Oh, no,
a similar thing where he's like, he did a thing once and he's like, never again until, Rockin' a Hard Place.
The Drop. It takes place in Brooklyn?
Yeah.
That shit. I love that one. That's good. That is his most understated acting role I've ever seen him do.
And Gandolfini kills in it.
Yeah. Oh, shit, I forgot about that. That was a good one.
I like that one so much that I bought the novel like right after and read it like back to back. But so we got like a little under 5 minutes left. Does anybody have a really good question in the back?
Yeah. Hi. I work with students at NIFA, a lot of like early illustrators, and a lot of them are very disillusioned by like big hate companies and things. What advice would you give them about self-publishing their own work?
I think now is maybe like a great period for self-publishing. Maybe, I think it should, in terms of access to readership, I think it's a great time. I don't know about monetizing so much, I think it possibly is. Like, I can't, I have to admit, I'm not, I'm out there too, kind of like hoping that it will be, fruitful, monetarily. But like, I think now in terms of visibility, man, there are people online who I know they have more readers than I have. They've never been published by Marvel or DC, and I know more people see their work, and their fans are out there. Now, is it going to pay their rent? I don't know, But I think mainly what I would say is don't be discouraged, and also believe in yourself and know that maybe if you're out there hustling, you might actually have more information than someone like I would have. More information than someone like me would have. Like, trying to kiss the mic, though. You know what I mean? Like, so I would say be brave. And it's certainly possible. Right now, just be brave.
And there's so many options. Sites like Gumroad, Itch.io. Like, you can publish your stuff and put it out there in a way people want and do like pay whatever you want. Like, get $1 a book, $5 a book, or nothing a book, and people will pay attention. So, like, that bravery is really, it's tough, but like, you just gotta suck it up and do it. But that's our time. Right. You can find dpi.tumblr.com.
Yep. Or, you just Google my name, I'll pop up. Like, I'm on the IG too. I'm ronaldwimberly.com too, but like Tumblr is where I be at, and Instagram is where I'm at.
Yeah. And you've got a gratuitous ninja Tumblr. If you go back like 26 pages.
I hide things on the internet. A lot of my Tumblrs, if you find them, they're essentially a grab bag of media that kind of points to what my narratives are. It's almost like a mixtape of what it is. Like, There's actually a Sunset Park one that I've been putting out for a while, and like it's just a bunch of media and things that relate to Sunset Park. And like I don't expect any of y'all to find it, but like yeah, it's there's a hashtag running on my Tumblr that if you click it, you're gonna be like, you might just know the whole story from like if you're clever, you can figure out like exactly what I'm doing as I do it. Yeah.
Cool. Can I get a round of applause for this guy?